Hello, my name is Wes McNabb. I am a Master Certified Consultant using Ivanti Neurons for ITSM. I work for NCSI. Today I'd like to show you setting up a staging and UAT environment to go along with your already on-premise production tenant installed for ITSM. What I've done here and what you see on the screen is I've installed Service Manager onto another server. Less resources than our production server, but enough so that I can actually install and run two instances or two tenants here, basically staging and UAT. What you see on the screen is where the system configuration wizard pops up after installing Service Manager on this new server. And here are the default settings that come up, other than I've already chosen my SQL server where I'm going to put these databases. And I've given my configuration database name is configdb-dev. So what I do here in the beginning is I click this little drop down where it says production. I uncheck production and I choose that I want to install staging and UAT. Okay. You'll notice that the production configuration database name, basically this is my DNS name that points to my production server, and this is using SSL. And so there's also an item called central config API key that I need to get from the production server. So if I go look at my production server, I've logged into configdb and I can see my databases for production. There's my production database and also my configdb. If I come up here to configure application, I see that we have security controls and I have API keys. I'll want to get this API key and copy it, put it into Notepad or something so I can have it for my install of my staging and UAT environment. Let's go back over to my dev box. And with this done and I've got my config API key put in here, I'll click OK. And no error, so I got the right config API key. All this looks good. configdb. I want to use SQL authentication in my case. You could use Windows authentication, just we need to have access to be able to create the databases. So my SQL authentication, I've created a user in SQL with a password, and I can test that connection here. Looks like it's good. And at this point, I want to load my configuration database. This is not going to overwrite the configdb from production. This is going to be a separate configdb database. And so I'm going to choose to load this. At this point, I'll come down and click Next. We're going to be required to just check all our entries, make sure they look correct. They do. And we'll scroll down here and we'll see that this is central config is fine. My license server is going to be my dev box. So I'm going to need to have the license. This will be for staging UAT. And I have a login ID by default. It's HSW admin. I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. Type in a password. And a first name. And just make something up here. And click Next. We'll notice in the wizard that basically SQL authentication is what we're going to use, and the username. I'm going to go ahead and make a SQL authentication, use my SQL ITSM admin user that I created on SQL. Make sure this is correct, the database. And I'm not going to put an application database name here. I'm installing staging in UAT, and I'm going to use something called Operations Console to get a copy of staging, of production, and use it for staging in UAT. So at this point, I can test this connection, just make sure it works. They're going to say it doesn't matter. We're just going to go ahead and click Next. All right, and so here I will see, here's my DNS name I've set up to point to this dev box, and my host name's ISM dev. Obviously, that's the name of this box. And then where can I do these backups of the SQL database and get to them from both production and staging? So I have a network share I've set up. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to put it here as well. Control-V. All right, and then we can test this. We have to have an account here that can get to that share and do the backup. Right, so I'm just going to do my we're going to go ahead and put the domain here. And let's test this guy. Config DB. Let's just do config DB and test. This is just to see that we can get to that share. And successful. All right, I know this is successful, but we'll go ahead and test it anyway. Let's say ITSM test. Doesn't matter which database. It's actually doing a copy. Make sure it can get to it. Make sure it can read it. Okay. Takes a little longer sometimes. And looks like we're good. Make sure that we've checked this box for use this host for Operations Console. Operations Console is what we're going to use to get a copy of production down to staging and UAT. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and leave these defaults. I'm not using SSL on my dev server. Next. And we'll see all of our settings here, what they need to be. I'm pointing to my DNS name. In case at some point in the future I want to switch over to SSL, I'll need to use the fully qualified domain name. And I'll leave those there. We'll see the inbound web service server is ISM dev. It's just this box here. And click next. Right. Metric server, all those additional items, you don't have to use those, but they're things you can configure for staging UAT as well. And I'll click finish. Right. At that point, I want to check my services, make sure they're running. All right, I'll scroll down here to Ivanti services. And I'll see that everything is running that I need to be running. Don't really need that, but we'll leave it at that. And exit out of here. So now at this point, I should have something called Operations Console that I can run. So we'll go to Operations Console. And I'm going to use my HSW admin login that I created. May take a moment. There we go. Coming up. And we see that we can see both of our config files, and we can see production. We don't see databases for staging and UAT yet, so I'm going to go over here and click Manage Migration. And I want to make a copy of production and put it on to staging. So you see I can have push this, and I can actually push production to UAT as well. And I'm going to go ahead and just click the push. All right, so we'll see we have an option here to choose from. And I'm going to create, obviously. The target landscape is going to be staging. And we're going to say that this is going to be from a live MSQL backup of production. Target DB server is all set up. I'm going to keep existing users. I'll go ahead and delete the audit logs, etc. And then I'm going to not trim this just because I've got sample data. I'll go ahead and shrink the database when I'm done. You do have the option to go ahead and, if I had another reporting server set up, I could point to that reporting server and give the name to login, etc. And we could create a copy of what is on our reporting server for production. I'm just going to get rid of those and not do it. I'm just going to make staging in UAT just of the database, of the heat database. Execute. And I want to confirm that. Yes. Now we'll get a little error message saying that it couldn't create one error, and if we look at the log, it'll say that it couldn't create the reporting services database. Give it a moment here. My database is not very large, so it shouldn't take too long. If you do have a large production database, it may take a little bit longer. And you'll see it's been successfully updated with one warning, and that warning is, I'm not going to go look at it even, but the warning is basically we couldn't create SSRS, or the reporting services. So here in production, I'm also going to go ahead and create a UAT, and I'll push that. And we'll just do it from the last SQL backup, save a little hard drive space, because we did a backup when we did the staging. So we'll keep existing users. We'll delete the audit log. I'm not going to trim my data. I am going to shrink it, and I'll get rid of this as well. And execute. And confirm it. Give it a moment here. And so, again, it's just doing a backup of the database and restoring it. And we see that it's been done. Click OK. We can look at events and audit history real quick just to go and see that what we're seeing is that we didn't get the SSRS. And these are in order this way, so I'm going to say let's sort them reverse and see the latest thing that happened. Sandbox create, UAT, and if we look at the info here, all right, didn't do the report server. So that's the error we're getting on that push. Okay, so we've run Operations Console. We've installed our Service Manager on a dev box. We've created staging and UAT, and we can come back and look at our tenants now, and we see that we've got staging and UAT showing up here. Here's UAT, and here's staging. So we'll go and see if we can't log into that. We'll go back up here, and actually, yeah, we'll just do it here. We'll just say, we can leave it that way, or I'm just going to say, heat. Yep, advanced, and go to it. All right, so now we have a login. We see we have these tenants to log into, our config.db, our staging, and UAT. We'll pick staging. And log in. And first time you log into the Service Manager tenant, obviously it caches, so it takes a little bit longer. We see what I've got now is an exact copy with only the last 90 days of data. If you choose that option on Operations Console, I've got all of my data in this case. So that is pretty much it. If I want to log into UAT, I can simply log out here, yes, and I can choose the UAT tenant to log into, and log in. Now I have stage UAT and my production servers over there. This is simply about creating staging UAT to give you a environment where you can do all of your development staging, create packages, and push those packages to UAT to test them, because UAT is an exact copy of production. Test them, user acceptance testing them, and then once that is done and signed off on that package, you can take that package and then push it to production. There'll be another video soon discussing that development cycle and how to create projects, how to create packages, how to get those pushed to UAT, and then how to lock those packages down and then push them to production. Thank you.